This tutorial is part of our full-stack React Django DRF channels project, DJ Chat. You can watch this tutorial and many more from our YouTube course playlist, or the whole course, including access to additional resources from our Udemy course. The Udemy course link, which provides the best price for the course, is in the video description. One of the main benefits of using Django is there is a lot of pre-built-in functionality that we can work with straight away when developing our project. One of those is the user administration, if you like, system. Now, we don't necessarily have a lot of information at the moment about our application. However, we probably have already guessed that this is an application that requires user authentication. So we are going to need to maybe at some point create some sort of system whereby users can log in. So we are going to need to manage users' details or user data. Now, we don't have any specifications at the moment as to what data we're going to need to store, but it's likely that we're going to need to add or change or extend the existing Django system that's in place for managing and storing data about users. The Django documentation does recommend defining a custom user model at the beginning of the project rather than using the built-in user model. Now, this allows for greater flexibility and customization in terms of adding additional fields, changing the authentication method, and integrating with maybe third-party packages, all of which we probably want to do on this project. So we're going to just start off by defining a custom user model that can potentially help prevent any issues with migrations and data migrations down the line if changes are needed in the user model. So we're trying to basically just preempt the fact that we are going to need to change the user model, so the user table, later on in the project. And we're just putting something in place now so that it makes it easier potentially for us to do that later on in the project. So there are some different approaches here, and we're going to take the most simplest approach in order to just get this started. Now, Django provides an abstract base user and a base user manager class. And this can be used as a starting point for creating a custom user model. So if you want to learn a little bit more, check out the documentation. That should give you a good overview as to kind of the different approaches that you might want to take. And it really depends in your project what changes you want to make to the user model. And that will then define the approach that you take. So overall then, defining a custom user model at the start of the project can save time and prevent potential issues in the future. So let's go ahead now and build a new custom user model. Now, we're going to need to manage the users or accounts, we're going to call them, in this project. So we're going to create a new app in order to provide a way of placing all the logic or the code related to accounts in the same place. So let's just make sure that we're in the right folder here. So we are in the DJ Chat folder. So let's go ahead now and use the command we did previously. So manage.py and then start app, and let's create a new app called account. Like I said, this app here is going to house all the code, logic, business logic related to managing accounts. Now, what we want to do is just extend the existing model. So we just want to prepare it so that potentially we want to add some additional fields or eventually maybe some different functionality related to the user table. So what we're going to do here is we're going to use AbstractUser. In Django, I like to think of the AbstractUser as a starting point for creating a custom user model in our Django project. So this is going to provide all the methods and fields of the normal user model, and then it's going to allow us to extend and add some new fields if we need. So let's go ahead and say Django from Django.contrib .auth.models. So let's go ahead and import abstract. You can see there's a few different options here. So we need the abstract user. Right, so with that in place, we can now just go ahead and create our new user table. Now we might want to call this account. So you can see that terminology is going to be important here. So I'm going to, let's call this account, because then that just matches the terminology that we're going to be utilizing for a user, in this case, account. So let's go account, and then we're going to bring an abstract user here. So essentially there we are inheriting all the functionality of the normal user model or the normal user, and then we can then utilize that and extend as we need. So we're just going to pass it. So we don't want to add any functionality at the moment. We're just going to pass there. So that's just in preparation for us to extend and maybe add some new fields that we're going to need in the user model later in the project. Now, importantly, why we're doing this now is because we're going to be referencing this model that we potentially are going to extend later in the project in the server app here. So this is why we're actually building this now, so that we can just put this in place. So we need to make fewer changes later in the project. Right, so now we have that. Let's just make sure that what we didn't do in the previous tutorial is just register the two apps that we have created already. So in the installed apps here, let's just go ahead and make sure that we add account and that we add server. So let's just double check we've got that in place. So that is just telling Django that these two apps are now part of the project that we're building, and it knows where to find them. So we've now specified or created a new user model that the authentication system should use. Now, by default, this setting is set to the auth user, the default user table. But we want to now utilize this table here as the new user, or what we've now called account table. So let's go into settings. What we need to do, let's just move down to the bottom, just zoom out a little bit. If we move down to the bottom here, let's go ahead now and pass in the auth user model. So specify the auth user model, and now we need to just specify the fact that's in account dot, and that's going to be account. And there we go. So that now defines the new user model. So to summarize, by defining our own user model, we now have complete control, or we now have control over the fields and methods of that model, allowing us to customize it to suit our needs. In addition to that, we also put this in place now because we are going to need it when we start to develop our server app. So here it's going to make it easier for us to specify that particular, what would be this particular table in our database, so that we can then use it within our models and our views in the server app.